428 Sumter, we have a female tied up in the back of this residence.
I mean, I don't think it's right for someone to be tied up to a chair outside when it's cold out.
What you got to understand is the things you use to implement restraint are not even close to legal.
On a chilly night, November 2022, police in Wildwood, Florida found a woman tied to a chair in the backyard of a home. They'd soon discovered that the woman had developmental and physical disabilities that made it nearly impossible for her to advocate for herself. And despite pleas from officers on scene that the woman go to the hospital, the owner of the care home where she lived seemingly refused. Just days later, some of those same officers returned to the care home, but this time for a death investigation. We are partnering up with our sponsors at Morgan & Morgan to talk about the ongoing legal battle to hold the caretaker accountable and get justice for Nichole Baker. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We're bringing you a heartbreaking case today. Allegations of incompetence, allegations of medical malpractice, allegations of a lack of empathy, and all that apparently led to the death of 27-year-old Nichole Lynette Baker back in 2022. Attorneys with the powerhouse law firm Morgan & Morgan claim that the actions of caretakers at the care home where Nichole lived caused her to die. And it's their alleged inactions that are being called into question in an ongoing lawsuit that we're going to talk about. So Nichole's autopsy report revealed she only weighed 91 pounds at the time of her death. And the lawsuit against the group home, called Beyond Expectations, states, quote, due to mental and physical disabilities, Nichole Baker was unable to effectively speak, communicate, care for, or protect herself in any way. Quote, she and her family placed their trust in Beyond Expectations LLC and Teresa L. Williams to care for and protect her from harm. But Wildwood police discovered the opposite on November 23rd, when they responded just before midnight to a report from a neighbor that he'd been hearing someone crying for help for several hours.
There's somebody in that car, I think there's someone, and they're saying help me, and I can't, I can understand that they're saying help me, but I can't distinguish whether it's a male or female or how old.
And it's this house right here.
Yes, in that carport, because my carport's right next to it, and I just walked out there, and that's when I heard it.
Gotcha.
Like the windows.
All right, we're gonna go check real quick.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Are you okay? No, bro.
449 Sumter, send back up.
The other officer's body cam gives us a better angle of what the officer saw through that fence.
Hello? Hello? Are you okay? Yo, bro. Yep. 428 Sumter, we have a female tied up in the back of this residence. Hello, are you okay? Are you okay?
I need to go see the hospital.
Are you okay? Alright, I'm cutting her off. I'm cutting her down. Alright. I have no clue. She's signal 20, I'm thinking. Alright, are you okay? Alright, I took him off. Okay. I took him off. Alright. Here, sit down here. Sit down right here.
So these officers apparently found Nichole sitting in a plastic chair with her hands tied to a wooden pole. She was wearing a t-shirt, pajama pants, sneakers. According to a police report, it was around 66 degrees at the time with a light mist. This is such a sad case, but it's an important one. It's an important one to cover. And I'll tell you what, we wouldn't have even known about it if it wasn't for Morgan & Morgan. The lawyers in this case, our sponsor, our partner. This is America's largest injury law firm. Let me tell you what, Morgan & Morgan, They're incredible. They have an amazing track record. In the past few months, Morgan & Morgan secured a $9.3 million verdict for a car crash victim in Florida, a $5.6 million verdict for another car accident victim in Atlanta, and not to mention $1.8 million in Kentucky after insurance offered them just $5,000 in that case. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan makes it so simple. You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks, and everything from signing contracts to uploading documents to talking to your legal team, it can all be done through the phone. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC Sidebar. Now, unsure of the situation, the officers bang on the back door of the home, guns drawn. 2 adults, a caregiver named Desiree and her boyfriend Thordis, eventually come outside, with police temporarily detaining Thordis for refusing to follow their instructions. Desiree is an employee of Beyond Expectations, while Thordis is Teresa Williams' son. Now, while some of the officers sweep the home to determine who else is inside, others end up cutting the pieces of clothing that were apparently being used to tie Nichole to the post and get her a blanket to cover her up.
I don't know if you saw, we took the ribbons off. It was making impressions in her wrist. They were so tight. And they were knotted, like the first one was 2 knots on this hand, the second one was 3 knots, and then there was like 4 knots on this hand.
Did we get pictures of her wrist?
I got
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah. Her wrist, where the ribbons were, is smaller than her actual, it like made an impression. It was so tight.
Unreal, dude.
And she's skin and bone, so it's 66 degrees out.
Dude, she's freezing.
And they quickly realize that getting information about what's going on, it's going to be difficult. Nichole's speech is jumbled, she seems confused, and Desiree won't talk until her boss, Teresa, gets there.
Do you know your name, sweetie?
Nichole Baker.
Nichole? How long have you been out here?
My friends are going outside.
Your friends are coming outside?
Yeah.
Who's your friends?
I went outside all week.
All week?
Yeah. Do you want to take me to the hospital?
We're going to have a doctor take a look at you. Make sure you're okay. Okay?
I want something.
I know you do. What's on your wrists, Nichole? What's on your wrists?
I'm taking it out.
No, you can leave it. Who put those there?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Are we gonna have dinner tonight?
I'm sure you'll have some dinner, yeah. You hungry? Yeah, you hungry?
I want pizza.
You want pizza? Okay.
Nichole asks for food several times, also requests to go to the hospital. The officers and later paramedics think that that is a good idea, even if just to get checked out. But there's confusion about who needs to give permission for Nichole to go.
I don't understand how you can tie that person up and then still pull power of attorney. That's bull. There's no way that should still be viable. There's got to be something. There's got to be something. How are you going to tie somebody up against their will, have them cold, freezing, and then say, no, we don't want them transported? Like, it should be Nichole's decision right now whether she wants to get transported or not. And she wants to go. And I don't blame her. I don't want to leave her here.
So Teresa eventually arrives on scene and seems confused about why the home would be surrounded by police.
I don't know what all the workers who called you told you so far, but pretty much we got someone in the area hearing someone yell for help.
Okay.
And when we got here, they were able to see that there was a resident tied up in this carport back here, behind the back on a chair, with no one supervising her, just tied up.
Okay. Well, that sometimes we have several people in the house that if there's any occasions, they have to try to protect the ones that's safe. Now, I'm not sure which person It might be, but it's a possibility that we do have one that does hit, and she will run away. So sometimes they restrain her, but I don't think that it's...
Well, I mean, this isn't medical restraints. This is like a piece of fabric, like a cloth, tied to behind the back to a metal chair in an open carport. There's nothing medical about that whatsoever.
Well, if this is the one, Nichole, we have a client that live here. Nichole, she often get away. So she will fight, she will hit, and for her safety, sometimes they do restrain her. So, and we do have orders from the doctor.
So Desiree explains to an officer that there are 4 other patients who also live in the home, and she apparently was outside with all of them when Nichole reportedly became aggressive and out of control. So she ended up apparently tying her up to the chair while she got the other patients inside and helped them go to bed. And she claims Nichole was only out there for about 30 minutes. So Teresa gets a binder from inside the home that she says contains all of Nichole's paperwork. The officers, they continue to question how it can be acceptable to tie someone, anyone, up outside at nearly midnight.
What's the owner's name? Teresa. Do you have that power of attorney stuff? You have the power of attorney stuff on you? You mind if I take a look at it, the power of attorney stuff?
What do you mean the power of attorney?
You have power of attorney, right?
No, we don't have, there's no power of attorney.
There's no power of attorney?
Yes, she's competent. In her notes, she's competent. Not unusual sometimes for her to scream for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours. But after a certain amount of medicine, we could only give her, she only has an order for a certain amount of medicine for anxiety within a certain amount of time. So when she's having these behaviors, it's not like we have authorization to just give her this medication. So the only other offense we have is to separate her. And if she's throwing, or if she's hitting, or if she's biting, then we have to restrain her. And it's not so much just for her, it's for everybody's safety, And that's what she was doing. When they have behaviors, we have orders to restrain them.
So is there orders that say that she's to be tied outside on a wood pillar?
Well,
to
it's
a chair?
not. It doesn't say a specification to a wood pillar outside in a chair. But wherever the situation is, if that's where the option was,
I'm pretty sure that a doctor is not going to write an order to tie somebody up outside.
It's not an order to tie anybody up
anywhere. Is
anywhere.
there an order in that book that says tie her up outside?
It's not an order to say to tie them out anywhere in specification.
There's medical restraints that doctors use.
But if that is correct, if there are restraints, so if there are and she does have an order, if there are activities to where she's harmful to herself, or hurting, in threat of hurting some of the other clients, then of course we have orders to restrain her.
With medical restraints or with scarves?
Whether it's, and I'm not sure. No, it's not. It's whatever you have to restrain her with at that time, And I'm not being difficult, but I'm just trying to explain to you our situations in that same aspect.
I guess the way I look at it is, if you are a behavioral facility, you should have other methods of dealing with this besides tying them up outside.
Which we do.
If that's what you specialize in,
and that's the least. That's the last.
You don't tie people up outside.
That's the last. And I don't think
law enforcement, if there is something that severe to where you have to, if you feel you have to tie a person up outside because you are that worried for the safety of them and the safety of the people in the home, then at that point you pick up the phone, you say, hey, I need 911 here.
But Teresa continues to insist that the caregivers have permission to restrain Nichole when she becomes a danger to herself or others. And according to the lawsuit against Teresa and Beyond Expectations, Teresa told law enforcement that this is not the first time Nichole had been tied up and that it was common practice when residents acted up. But there's still a lot of confusion. Does the group home have guardianship of Nichole? What about power of attorney? Does Nichole herself have any agency? In the end, paramedics looked at the documentation that she had and determined she had authority over Nichole's medical and dental care. So Teresa refused to allow Nichole to go to the hospital. And then a supervisor from the police department came out to talk to Teresa about the situation.
If she would have been inside, it would have been a different situation. she was outside to where they couldn't control her. She couldn't control her. So she put her, since she was in that area where she was already at, temporarily, that's what she did until she was getting the situation under
Okay, so
control.
how temporary is temporarily?
I think it was like 30 minutes.
So, in that 30 minutes, it was impossible to call 911. It was impossible to call an ambulance. It was impossible to get a possible Baker Act. It was impossible. I'm trying to be as level-headed as I can here.
I understand.
Under no circumstances would I consider that okay. Under no circumstances, unless it was absolutely an emergent situation to where you had to restrain her long enough to get an ambulance here or the police here to Baker Act her and or to some type of hospital.
And I think that in that time frame, that was one of the considerations. It's not like she had been there for an extended amount of time.
Well,
She had not.
the complainant says she's been hearing them all day. Now, I can't verify that or not because the house is kind of secluded and you can't really see in.
Well, you know, when you say, wait a minute, when you say hearing them all day, it's quite possible that she did hear it, wherever it come from. This is something she do all day, every day.
Now, according to an incident report, the supervisor determined that there appeared to be, quote, substantial reason to tie up Nichole, although the means and location were not the best choice. As police leave the home, Teresa has this to say.
Have a little mercy on us.
I understand that.
Have a little mercy. Have a little mercy on us. If you knew everything that we actually deal with on a regular basis, on a daily basis,
I get
have
it.
a little mercy.
I'm sure it's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
That's great. Have a nice night.
According to a police report from that night, an officer contacted the Florida Department of Children and Family Services and got the runaround. The officer requested an on-call investigator immediately respond, but the investigator said since Nichole was an adult, what's known as a, quote, adult protective investigator would need to be contacted by calling a hotline. So when the officer called the hotline, he was told they would try to get out there within the next 24 hours, but couldn't guarantee it. Less than a week later, after all is said and done, Nichole would be dead. Officers, including some of the same ones who had responded to the home days before, responded to a call about an unresponsive person. And despite the apparent emergency situation, an officer had to actually jump a locked gate to get inside the property.
430 Sumter, Channel 14, gates locked. Do you have a history of using any kind of drugs?
No, we take some medicine, but not drugs.
Does she have any medical conditions?
Yeah, she's got a lot of medical conditions. Nichole. Yeah.
I'll take over compressions. I need you to go open the gate for AMR and the EMS because it's locked. That's 10-4. I'm 10-12. Starting compressions.
Going back to the lawsuit against Teresa and Beyond Expectations, it reads, on or about November 28, 2022, Teresa L. Williams called 911 because Nichole was unresponsive. She claimed she had moved Nichole from the bed to the floor, had checked on her not too long before law enforcement's arrival. EMS providers were able to determine that Nichole had been dead for some time prior to the call.
Do we have any known history of drug use or abuse of medications with her?
No. She just has a long
Medical
history and a long-term use of medications because of the history that she has.
But no abuse?
No abuse.
Okay. Do we know if she has control of her own meds?
No, they're dispensed to her
Okay.
by the caretakers.
So the same police supervisor speaks with Teresa again after Nichole is found dead. And Teresa tells him that the Department of Children and Families investigator came out, checked everything out, apparently finding nothing was wrong.
So the investigator himself actually came out within 24 hours after the police department came out on Thursday. So that's where we were with that.
Okay, so they didn't suggest that she go to the hospital and get checked out?
No, not to my knowledge. They didn't tell that to me.
Okay, did you tell them you had power of attorney and said no?
No, I did not tell them I had power of attorney. Matter to the fact, I explained all of that to them. What we have is this right here. They took pictures of what I have. They was asking me about guardianship. I told them that I did not have guardianship over Nichole because Nichole on her plan of care. This is what we have from our state office for Nichole.
The only issue I see right now is if in fact, because it was my understanding, and I may be wrong, it was my understanding that EMS was told them that they're not allowed to take her to the hospital. It was my understanding that night. And if that's the case, and I can easily go back and look at all the videos. If that's the case, then we're going to have an issue. If it's not the case, then I don't see that we're going to have an issue. Only because any kind of medical intervention between that night and today may have changed things, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. We don't even know what you died of.
Exactly.
So, but that's where we stand. We're going to have to obviously call DCF again and let them roll in a little deeper.
But the lawsuit takes into question what Teresa apparently told police on the day that Nichole died, because the complaint reads, however, this time when speaking with law enforcement, Teresa L. Williams said placing Nichole in a chair outside is not a common practice, and that the incident on November 23, 2023 was the first and only time that had happened. There were numerous inconsistencies and contradictory statements by Teresa L. Williams throughout her interaction with law enforcement. Now, an autopsy later confirmed that Nichole died of combined drug toxicity, meaning she was given too much medication and overdosed. And in what may be the most heartbreaking part of this, it is laid out in the complaint that neither Teresa L. Williams nor any other staff member of Beyond Expectations LLC ever notified Nichole's family of her passing. Instead, they had to learn of this tragic incident from the funeral home. So the lawsuit lays out 5 causes of action that they're suing under: medical malpractice, wrongful death against Beyond Expectations LLC, medical malpractice, wrongful death against Teresa L. Williams, civil false imprisonment against Beyond Expectations LLC, abuse, neglect, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult against Beyond Expectations LLC through its employees, and then abuse, neglect, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult against Teresa L. Williams. Okay, so I'm joined right now by Samantha Spandau, the attorney from Morgan, who is handling this case. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. I want to start off first and foremost, how's Nichole's family doing at this point?
Yeah, Nichole's family, they're doing okay. Once something like this happens and you lose a loved one, there's always going to be a hole in the family and your heart and your day to day. But with this medical malpractice case progressing, they're starting to finally feel just a sense of hope and a sense of justice. That's something that they haven't been able to feel in a very long time.
It's interesting you say that, because I was talking with my producer about this before we did this interview, and one of the things that she relayed to me, and we'll talk more about the actual legal case, is that it's not so much about the money, right? For you and the family, it's more than that. It's not about the money.
It's not. And when we first met with the family, we really didn't even know if we'd be able to recover any type of monetary compensation. It really, for them, was Teresa Williams is a nurse, and she's a nurse who still currently holds her license and has the ability to possibly do this to someone else and to another family. And not only do they want justice for themselves, and they want to feel some sort of vindication that Nichole's death isn't just going unnoticed or unanswered to, but also that down the line, this never happens again, and the public is aware of what had happened.
Can we follow up on that? You said that she's still a nurse. Has there ever been any kind of disciplinary action against her? Has there been any response regarding this lawsuit, or is she still practicing nonetheless?
So at this point in discovery, we don't know exactly what she's doing on her day to day. They did revoke the facility's license. So Beyond Expectations license was revoked, but not her personal nursing license. So we're hopeful that that's something that will happen. That's not something we can achieve in the medical malpractice case. It's up to the Board of Nursing and ultimately the state to do that. But that's something that we're hopeful will happen throughout this process.
Do you know anything about her history?
So we're still getting a lot of that information, but we do know that Wildwood Police Department had actually responded to beyond expectations previous to this regarding another resident. And there were two incidents where they responded. And on the last one, they had determined at that point that the facility and Miss Williams did not have the proper resources necessary to care for this specific special needs individual. And besides her removal, nothing really came from that, to our understanding.
Talking about the police, by the way, I want to just go back for a second. Why were there no arrests on the November 23rd, 2022 incident?
You know, that's a great question, and it's a question that I can't answer. The only people who can answer that are the Wildwood Police Department detectives and officers who were there that day and the department itself.
Have they released a statement? Have they provided a response?
They haven't publicly, to our knowledge, released any statement or provided a response. In our conversations with them, they did not answer any of our questions. So we're still left not knowing why exactly they chose not to press charges.
Do you, if this progresses towards a trial, would you hope to subpoena them and have them testify, the officers testify, or members of the department testify?
So if we were able to, it would be something that would be interesting, and we would love to have a lot of that information in a medical malpractice sense, proving that case before a jury. It's not something that evidence would actually come into play as something that is relevant to what happened to Nichole, but it would definitely be interesting to be able to put them on the stand and figure out why exactly they didn't.
One of the more, I shouldn't even say more disturbing, because there's a lot of disturbing allegations in this suit, but there was an allegation that Williams didn't notify Nichole's family. Has there been an explanation for why she wouldn't have done that?
At this point, we don't have one. Through the discovery process, part of that is taking her deposition, and that's a question we'll certainly be asking her.
From what you've been able to gather so far in this case, that seems so strange, though, right? Like, she wouldn't notify the family that Nichole died. Do you anticipate what a response could be, what a defense could be to that allegation?
There's always a defense to everything. That specifically is going to be hard to explain. That we know that it didn't happen, right? We know because the family never found out until someone from the funeral home called them. So how they're going to be able to explain the justification behind doing that, we're unsure of, truly.
Yeah, it's one that stood out to me. I want to get a little bit into the law here. I want to explain a little bit more about the medical malpractice counts. Okay, so how do those apply, and what are you actually alleging? What are the causes of action here when we're talking about medical malpractice against different parties in this case? Explain to us a little bit more about that and how they apply.
Yeah, so it's interesting in this case because first look, it seems very criminal. And with the medical malpractice side, the real reason why this comes in is just because of what type of facility this was and the licensure that Teresa Williams has. So she is essentially a nurse, right? So anything that she does when she's treating her residents is governed by the applicable standard of care. So the nursing standard of care. So whether that being appropriate disciplinary measures when it comes to taking care of adults who have special patient administration, she's operating and doing both of those things through her nursing license. In fact, the only reason why Nichole was at this facility specifically was because she was recovering from an injury, and Teresa Williams was a nurse. So all of her care that she provided was done so through her nursing license, and that's how we get into this medical malpractice action. So she has this ability to give Nichole her medications. Nichole cannot give her medications herself. So if that is done in a manner that's below the standard of care, that's where we're able to go forward on a medical malpractice civil action.
And what is usually an anticipated defense to this? Is it saying that whatever treatment program was used, whatever medication program was used, was following the typical standards? It was looking at the facts and circumstances at the time? Because if this does progress to trial, they're going to have to explain what we saw in that body cam, right? And I'm curious, what is it usually an anticipated defense to a medical malpractice claim like this?
So this is also a rare type of medical malpractice case, truthfully, and typically in all areas of law, what they like to do is blame the patient, blame the plaintiff, blame the person. So with the false imprisonment counts, there's maybe a way that they can try to explain it. With the medication administration, it's going to, it was the medication that Nichole was prescribed. It was just the amount in which she received. That was the issue. So they're going to have to come up with some way to say that was the appropriate amount, even though the autopsy says otherwise, that they did not provide the medication. You know, there's different things that they could try to say, but they're essentially going to have to blame someone other than themselves.
When it comes to false imprisonment, though, right, from what we saw on the body cam, could they say it was justified, that that's been done in other situations before? I'm not familiar with that. I've never seen anything like it, but is that something that maybe is standard if someone is acting out, if a patient's acting out in some capacity? Again, it seems to me on the surface, no, but I'm curious if what a defense could be to false imprisonment.
So they certainly can try. And as you can see in the body camera footage, that's the first thing that they say, is that she was disrupting other residents during feeding time, and that's why they restrained her. You can also see in the body camera footage, the police reports when the 911 call came in, that this was almost midnight. So if there was a reason, a behavioral reason to restrain her, it wouldn't be outside at night in the cold, inappropriately dressed, and tied up with her hands behind her back.
Yeah.
So they can say that, and that's certainly a defense that if I had to, I would. You have no other choice, really, if you have to defend this case, that to say something like that. But it's going to be very difficult for them, because it's not so much why they did it, it's the circumstances surrounding how they did it.
Do you think the lack of arrest could impact the case?
We don't. And that's because criminal and civil are completely different. And there's different burdens of proof and different counts and different things that you have to prove. There's aspects to both. But just because something's not criminal in nature, it doesn't mean it's not civil.
Right. 100%. We've seen that countless times. Everybody look up, also the OJ case is a classic example of criminal for civil liability. There was something else in your complaint. It's the violation of the 415 statute. Can you talk to us a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, so that's actually a great statute that the whole purpose is to protect vulnerable adults. Anyone over the age of 18 who, for some reason, does not have the ability to protect themselves, not have the ability to maybe formulate normal thought processes, be able to speak up when necessary. There's a wide group of individuals who can fall into this protected statute.
Unfortunately, I understand the need for it. I get it. You look at the allegations in this case. Again, you understand the need for it. Where are we right now in the litigation? What's the status of it? Have they filed an answer to your complaint? Where are we, maybe in terms of discovery? Just where are we at right now in litigation, and what do you anticipate the road is going to look like?
So we're still in the discovery process. So we're still getting information back and forth, whether it be medical records, answers, requests to produce, interrogatories. What we're still working on is finishing setting the depositions of all the parties. Right now, we have dates set for the mom and aunt of Nichole, and they are ultimately excited. This is the first time in this whole process where they're no longer on the sidelines, and they can finally have their voice be heard, and they have the ability to tell, they feel, right, like the world, that Nichole was more than just this person who died and nothing happened. That's how it felt to them for so long. And in these depositions, they're going to be able to say exactly what she meant to them and how much she really just loved life.
Yeah. Listen, Samantha, I appreciate you coming on and explaining a little bit more of the intricacies of this case, and also a little bit more about Nichole in general and her family. I think it was really important to get that side of it. And we're going to keep a careful eye on it. Samantha Spandau from Morgan & Morgan, you were the ones who also told us about this case and shed a light on it. So I think it's important that people learn a little bit more about it. And again, thank you for taking the time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.